Good morning. Well, big move on that number that hit resistance and backing off. So it continues to run in place. We'll see what ends the day. Um, so far, it's been an impressive 5-minute bar that hit the top of the range and backing off here. And we'll see if it can hold on here. And if it does, well, then we'll think about that this is going to go higher. And that 4,200 number on the futures there, if they can even get there, be a sticking point. We'll see where that is related to the S&Ps, but still trading range. Bottom of the range. I've got the green line. Well, that's where the support is initially, and even it really shouldn't even, I think, go below yesterday's low. It was a bit of a small bar going nowhere, so down there. If it would be a big move today if it was to go down there, and I tend to think that it won't. But that's the line in the sand, and from that longer time frame, the weekly, bottom of the range to the top of the range, maybe it pops a little bit higher, but moves like that typically they stall there, and then we're going to see how much it corrects. So as far as that bar goes, we'll see where that ends the day, 24-hour chart. So we're going to get a gap up on the spiders. We'll see where it gaps up. Still 25 minutes to go. So it went up as far as into that resistance there, close to that pivot high. Now as it's pulling back, big bar like that creates a void and nothing to stop it other than buyers stepping up. But so that those highs there, yesterday's close, it would be coming all the way back down there, which is, I think, almost probable that it's going to do that the way it's moving. So if it does by, the open, there was a very big move that got totally rejected, but it'll be support. So somewhere in here, and then you got the pre-market area. Yesterday's close. Anyway, that's the next support there. So I'm going to drag that down now. So that's yesterday's close on the top of the range there. Shouldn't go back down there on a gap up, but probably will, because bottom of the range, top of the range would make sense to do that. And then we'll see where it ends the day. So numbers changing, of course, on SPX as things move rapidly. And so can't place those trades pre-market, but so I've got written down there from what it was before, 4190, which to me, I think is in the area of a no-brainer that it's not going to get there, because you have to get through these highs here. And then by 4,200, that's just going to be another wall. And probably the down below numbers increasing, which I had 4070. 4070, yeah, now 4070 is increasing. So even, they're moving, because prices are moving rapidly. It could even go down to 4060 at this point. And so I'm seeing where that is. It's below this pivot low. So having been, right, we got to go back to SPY and the futures, having been all the way up here to travel through, my little lines there that we use kind of get in the way there as the new bar formed, to come from up where it was up here to all the way down here in a day is unlikely, right? And that's all the credit spread, the essence of a credit spread is. I think it's unlikely that prices are going to go to a certain level. And then why do you believe that? Well, it has to travel so far. It's got to go through yesterday's close, which is relatively easy to do, but then it's got to go through those prior 2 days and then the support down here. And so that would be stopping points. And so you've got what I like to call lines of defense that are going to be where your credit spread is not going to be in danger. But as if things are moving down there. And so if they continue to move in the next 20 minutes, that number below 4060 will increase. Does it stall? So right now that's a doable number, 4060, and the 4190 number is deteriorating. So that the higher number, you got to start adjusting. So 4185 still has enough premium to do that. So it's kind of a moving target, so to speak, as to what we would be willing to do. So let me just go back to the futures. Okay, so they haven't reached. Well, they're coming close to this pivot high. Well, they're not that close. Let's drag this up here for now. So momentum is slowing for whatever reason at this point, and big momentum move up. And I'll just put that on a 2-minute chart for a second. It was just such an explosive move on the number, which just it skews things. So so I'm going to this smaller chart, smaller time frame to see how momentum begins to slow to the downside. So basics of what we look for, right? We had a strong move up. It's at resistance. Getting further up here is, I think, unlikely today. But as it comes down to where support is, that doesn't mean it can't try and go back up there. And so as this is coming down, drawing too loud here, right? So as this starts to come down, and if it gets down to this destination and then starts to go sideways, maybe it starts to lift back up again. So be watching for that. All right, so interest rates fell sharply. And so just the opposite reaction as interest rates came down. And looking at that, not the core CPI, but just that CPI dropped from 6% to 5%, they're looking at March. Well, okay, but the number isn't real, meaning because it's a month old, crude oil was down here in March. Now it's completely back up here again. And they said food prices actually didn't change very much. So I think this number is a bit of a mirage. But because depending on where crude oil is when they do the next report, I mean, it's just going to go back up again. So again, this number is taking into consideration crude oil down here. Now it's completely back to where it was the month before. So, I mean, if someone maybe look at these numbers a little more in depth than what I'm just over cursory look, what I read. But as far as the energy component is, gasoline, that's erroneous. But hey, it's a lower number, 1 percentage point. That's great, but I don't think it's a real number. All right, so this is kind of what we like to see as prices come down, as these did, and you start to see, and it gets close to some reference point like that, and then it begins to create pivot points where the crude oil, right? This is going to go back up again, right? That creates support where there isn't any. Retest it, topping tail ignored. If this bar closes near its high, time for this. Should have a timer on that bar. Status line. Goes countdown. All right, 7 seconds to go. So what we'd like to see is a bar that just closes decisively. And so far that one isn't. And you can see now it's done. So a bar that closed at its high, you expect that buying to continue into the next bar. That's why I want to see where the bar closes. But in any event, it's going sideways here and trying to move up and looks like it's going to. So crude oil moving back up again, and going back to this report, it's got a big hole in that data. Right. So gold is moving up here. It's going to retest. We got to go back and look at the dollar, which is coming down to this support level here. We still need to see if it can hold somewhere in here. But if this continues to move lower, gold will continue to move up, and it is extended short term, and silver really took off, cleared those highs and end this high here. So that's had a hell of a move. Can it get up there? Well, there's nothing to stop it. As the dollar keeps moving down, but people keep buying this based on, it's interesting, it's not coming down at all on that lower inflation number, but I guess more speculation as to what's going to happen with these banks. All right. NQs, trading range, come up here, it's backing off. It's trying to make a little turn here, lower high. Is it on support? Well, yeah. You got to cross what's directly to the left, but these are the levels that you need to look at as to possible turning points. Same as we did with the ES. Top of the range, stalling, going sideways. So that got above these areas. As the market opens, we'll see where these Dow stocks are doing. What's moving up here? And is it tech, or is it consumer staples, defensive stocks? But that's getting close to the top of its range as well. And we can't see what transports are doing, but a lot of them were coming back from this deep move down. So there's many patterns that came down pretty darn hard and hit support, and whippy price action coming down hard and going right back up again. What's kind of become more of the norm in this market, just so much uncertainty about what's happening, and every number seems to be a huge focal point, but where there's this hesitancy and then right back up again. So this is something to keep an eye on. Right? That's probably bad data, but over the weekend, I haven't looked at, I don't know if that adjusts on day-to-day basis, but it was like, okay, the Fed's going to raise interest rates 1/4 point, right? 70% chance. And the 13-week Treasury bill moves up accordingly, as it should. And now with this number that's coming out, or did come out, does this number start to drop again? So, are they going to raise? Are they not going to raise? Another moving target as to what's going on. Bitcoin, it was down earlier, and now it's moving up and coming up to some resistance, but big move. It's created a level of support. If you're a Bitcoin trader or into holding this, they've got a definitive line in the sand down here at 28,000. And now that it's gotten above 30,000, should hit 31. It's right there, the size of these bars. But you've got a definitive line here that if it breaks below that, the move is over. And we'll see where the day ends. And, as already mentioned, moves running in place where they just hit the next level and backing off. So still producing the the stair step down, where we looked at, the other chart of crude oil, where it begins to flatten out and retest areas, that's where, something like this could have a higher probability move of continuing to push up once you get a retest. So some basic pattern, what you look for is something comes down into an area of little support. We'll see if this can regain its footing or whether it continues to the stair step lower. All yours, Dan.
Good morning. Set an alarm on workday here. All right, so we're heavily bullish. So this obviously is helping all our positions. I've been adjusting stops on Telegram. I have a big interest list. Yeah, spiders upper right there. Yeah, I've been watching it come down. I was actually surprised. Well, it did the 50% retracement. So I'll be more concerned with management at the open. I did post this as a put spread. Greg found this for us yesterday. That's a triple bottom. The only thing I would have liked more is a bottoming tail, but we're getting a gap up over 2 bars. So that to me now is a nice turn. Workday hasn't triggered yet, and now it's pulling in, giving up the gap. So that's good. And even if it does hit the trigger price, since today's Wednesday now, we only have 3 days left of Friday expiration. I doubt we're going to get the desired credit. So I'll just let it hit and then we'll reassess it in real time. W here, we're already long stock and short put spread. But I like Monday's close. So this 30-minute high, if you're not in this, looks like an ad. Rettle bottoming pattern, but I don't have a good place to get on board. Hilton, we have a put spread with a gap up. I moved the stop. I sent that on Telegram. The only reason I'm looking at Oxy is because Buffett's on CNBC today, and I was shocked. He loves Powell and is not admitting that they did anything wrong, and is still making fun of Bitcoin investors. But you can't argue with the chart. I mean, he was talking about you're never going to get rid of the gambling mentality of people, which I agree. Triton here, this has to be a buyout with a big old gap, but this was a nice bottoming pattern. It was a double bottom, breakout, and a higher low. Now we've been trading a number of patterns like this recently. Cell Z looks like a over the counter stock, but wow, that's a big gap. Wow. Now hypothetically, if it were just gapping over, let's say the 200 MA, then that would be a beautiful gap breakout trade from a bottoming pattern, but the gap's too big. Garmin, I was watching for a put spread, still on my list. ZBH was in the weekend letter as a breakout, and then I canceled it after Monday's bar. But now it's a closing gap breakout, daily, weekly, monthly, inverse head and shoulders on the monthly. I would love to get a 1, 2, 3 on that. BABA was also in the weekend letter as a put spread. It never triggered. Now it's gapping down again. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that right now. I had an alarm set, but with it gapping down, I'm not gonna even worry about it. DPZ was in the weekend letter and it triggered, the price triggered, but we didn't get the desired credit. So I republished it over yesterday's high. We'll do a put spread for next week. CCI bottoming pattern. Alex has been watching this. I have an alarm at 135 and change. AMT, same sector, broke out yesterday. A Munster I gave as a buy setup. Unless I have Expedia on the other charts. Let me put a Munster right here. From Sina. Sam gave me this as a short watch. And with the market gap up, if this takes out yesterday's low, that's just is relative weakness. AZEC broke out, but I need an entry. Oh, I think this might have been earnings. Oh no, that was on Sam's list also. Bert was on Sam's list. Now Skill broke out yesterday and failed, but it's still okay if it can negate this red bar. So I'm going to set an alarm at 205. And I love red bar nor breakouts. This techie, whatever, China stock. I looked, this would have been a no-brainer call spread. You know, consolidation and then a closing gap below it, all that becomes resistance. But it doesn't have options. But it could set up for a day trade short. Goldman got an upgrade, bottoming pattern. It's another one of these similar patterns where you got a double bottom breakout and pull back in reversal. It has room to slowly chug up to the 200. I mean, it'll depend on what some of these other banking earnings are going to be. Cooter, they're kicking out the CEO. It's a bearish gap under a wide range bar. That's a shock pattern. Could be a call spread candidate. BBBY, they're issuing a ton of stock. I wonder what price the stock's going to be at. Look at that, 32 cents, and it's in a death trend. That to me is just a lottery ticket. It's like, who would want to buy that stock? It's a lottery ticket. Do you think they're going to hire a turnaround expert?
They need money. The office manager went there last week, Dan. He said like they have no product to sell, very little. And so, you know, when somebody goes in there and you can't get what you want, well, you're not going back. And it's been like that for a while. So, like you said, it's a death trend. How are they going to turn it around?
Well, you need one of these, vulture venture firms, Blackstone, turnaround experts, whatever, and come in there and give them the funding and new management team. And, that's their expertise. All right, APOG, you were up, now you're down. So I've been mentioning a number of these patterns, W bottom and then breakout and pullback. But the counter to that is that many of these are sell setups. So this buy setup failing and now gapping under it is making this sell setup trigger lower. But that could be a call spread. Delta had earnings and it's totally flat. Or Jets, the bottoming pattern. Wow, it was down and recovered. I guess it recovered on the number. Dow tomorrow. I thought I saw some. All right, I don't know. All right, Natty here. This thing trades weird, like it was tied to another company buying them. And now with the gap up, maybe I'm just totally guessing that the buyout got approved or something like that. But there's no chart of interest. Okay, I don't know what I read. Pelletier, I know was on your list. I'll watch it with you. Press getting whacked. That is a just textbook breakout failure. You know, people ask us, how can you tell a breakout failure? The answer is you don't. You don't. We just try to focus on the most high probability setups using all of our concepts. This was a red bar ignored, beautiful closing breakout, and it failed. One deep retracement, relative weakness yesterday, and you got a price forward. I mean, the gap's too big though. And if this were gapping, let's say to $100, I would say short of 10-minute low because of this big old void here. But I'll watch it maybe for actually a contrarian play as a put spread, if 30-minute high maybe. Clorox, kind of the safety sector. I just don't like all the overlapping bars, but over yesterday's high, a put spread would be fine. IEYB, possible little bottoming pattern. Server, Alex mentioned yesterday, an inverse head and shoulders. I'm sold off into the close. DHI, I was hoping for a 1, 2, 3. It's a housing stock, but it's gapping up here, so that's messing up my 1, 2, 3 scenario. But nice breakout daily, weekly. Pfizer bottoming pattern. I'm just going to let it chug around. LCID. I sold some 7.5 puts yesterday. I'll watch this for a long entry. Same with Chug, beautiful little bottoming pattern. BuzzFeed, one of these AI stocks, bottoming pattern. Fubo, we entered yesterday. NCR. Now this is like one of the cleanest of these double bottoms breakout, buy setup, pullback reversal. So we entered this one yesterday. And you can add over yesterday's high. Looks good. Sprue here, bottoming pattern, but it's a penny stock over yesterday's high though. Kind of an inverse head and shoulders bottom with a void, if that's your style. Looks good over the high. Expedia, we talked about. CTOS. I got a couple of alarms going off on the CCI alarm. So I like this, maybe 10-15-minute high. The pre-market horsemen were trying to make a turn and they failed, so we'll just be patient. The tick over 1400, so that's very strong. Obviously a D line strong, 1800. All right, I had a up alarm, but I like this one, 10-minute high, whatever.
Paychecks gapped up from a retest pattern. We talked about it, I think early one day this week about it coming down and testing, and it gapped up. So that's one to keep an eye on for a day trade setup. It's got a little void on the hourly, and that could go higher, and maybe a put spread down.
Absolutely no brainer put spread down here.
Mm.
Let me just do this alarm first. LSXMK. I hate this symbol. So hard to pronounce. 2888. All right, we'll just go in trail mode on this little guy. Sam, are you looking at the foot spread on page 6? If not, I will.